Main role is to promote college hockey with that title, but he's a great supporter of high school hockey in Minnesota and promoting kids to stay in high school hockey here and play here, and the opportunities that will create for them going further on in their career if they do stay here and play. So, Mike, thanks for coming up and speaking to us. We appreciate you being here.
You got it. Thank you very much. I always appreciate the opportunity. Can you guys hear me in the back if I just talk like this? That's good. Thank you very much. Has anybody in here not heard of College Hockey Inc.? Please raise your hand if you haven't. Because we are a behind-the-scenes organization. We're just a 3-person, soon-to-be 4-person nonprofit. I happen to be in the Twin Cities, but we have a few other people, one in Michigan and one out in Massachusetts and one down actually in Kansas, of all places. But we've been around since 2010, and we were created really with one reason in mind, and that was because the number of Americans choosing to play major junior hockey had, and then therefore give up their college hockey eligibility, began to skyrocket about 20 years ago. In the early 2000s, it had always hovered around 35 to 45 in any given year. And then suddenly around 03, 04, credit to the major junior leagues, they started to recruit aggressively all throughout the United States, and those numbers started to skyrocket, and the college hockey community decided, hey, we want to educate those families, those players, so that they know just how good college hockey is. And a few years later, College Hockey Inc. was created, and we comply with NCAA rules so we can talk to 13, 14, 15-year-olds. More importantly, we can talk with their parents and be a resource for them about college hockey. So that's really what we started as a resource for college hockey, with our main objective being educating players and families throughout the United States and Canada and Europe about how good college hockey is, and most importantly, how to maintain your eligibility. Okay? We always lead off with the most exciting statistic, which is how well these young men do in the classroom when they make it to college hockey. 92% of guys that play college hockey will earn their degree. That includes the NHLers. That's sky high. It's always in the top 5 of all NCAA sports. It's well past just the graduation rate of students. So if you went over here to the campus at North Dakota and just plucked off a non-student athlete, they would have a much less likeliness of graduating than a college hockey player would. So we're really proud of the in the classroom stuff. But I'm going to have to say this the right way, we were probably pounding this message too much, and in an indirect, unintentional way, we were turning off young men that were really all about becoming the best hockey player they could be, becoming the best or making it to the NHL. This graph, I won't go right into it, but it shows that increase of Americans playing in the CHL, which is Major Junior Hockey, the Western League, the Ontario League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. It reached its peak in 2016 at 154, and it's gone down ever since. And this brings you out to last year, which was 80. This year, they just started their season, and now it's at 71. So it continues to go down, and that trend is also true in Minnesota. You might have been aware that in Minnesota, that number was increasing significantly. It went all the way up. Same year that it peaked in the country, it peaked in Minnesota. Was that 13? 13 guys in Minnesota were playing major junior hockey, therefore no college eligibility as recently as 8 years ago, and now we're down to one player from Minnesota playing major junior hockey this year. And also within Minnesota, every NHL player last year and this year that played in the NHL played college hockey. A couple of them played major junior hockey, but they started in college hockey and then left college to play major junior. But clearly the route to the NHL for a Minnesotan is through college hockey. Okay. So this is what we do. This is the bulk of what we do. We've added some other things to our role. We study, as you guys all know, how a young person plays their hockey varies a lot based on where they live, where they're growing up. Minnesota is probably the most unique place in the United States about where a person plays hockey. So if you want to capture this, we do research on most of the top hockey playing states. We did a research project last year on Minnesota commits from a certain window, just to look at where was that kid playing at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Where were they when they committed to their college? How old were they when they committed to their college? How old were they when they played their first game at their college? And in Minnesota, but everywhere, the perception that players and parents have about when that stuff happens is way out of line with the reality of when it happens. And as you probably can guess, they all think it happens earlier than it does. They all think they're behind the 8 ball. And all of us in this room, myself included, use the phrase late bloomer horrifically incorrect. What we call late bloomers frequently is middle of the bell curve normal, okay? Most kids do not commit to college, not just most, the vast majority don't commit to their college until after high school. Most kids don't show up and play their first game until into their 20s. And we have a tendency to call that kid a late bloomer. That kid is actually very, very normal, okay? If you want to see the Minnesota specific stuff, check out this QR code. It's on our website. We've also done paths research for Michigan, New York, Massachusetts, and a few different provinces in Canada. We'll be updating this with this year's players and updated research at some point during the year, so look for that, okay? So that's my job. That's College Hockey Inc. I can leave now. Maybe you're hoping I do, okay? But by coincidence, I'm also a Minnesotan. I grew up in Duluth, so when this job has allowed me exposure of hockey everywhere throughout the United States, but also into Canada, into Europe. So any chance I get to talk with this audience, I like to really personalize it not for me, but for the state, for what it looks like for players from Minnesota. So I'm going to show this information to you. I showed it to some people last spring, I think, at the board meeting during the state tournament. But no longer surprising, Minnesota leads all states, more men than any other state playing NCAA Division I men's hockey. Wasn't always the case. If you go back a while ago, Massachusetts would lead Minnesota, but Minnesota now always leads and is kind of pulling away every year. 223 men last year playing NCAA Division I hockey, as you can see here, 162 from Michigan, 130 from Massachusetts, the 3 M's. That's what we tend to compare it to. So right now, these were last year's rosters. We just finished counting this year's rosters with the start of the men's college hockey season last weekend. Just think what you think it's done, what changes have happened this year, and see if it's in line with what has happened this year. Minnesota, 10 more Minnesotans playing NCAA Division I hockey this year than last year. Okay. Michigan, 10 fewer. In 1 year, the gap, which has been growing every year, has grown by 20 players. I'm sorry, 24 fewer. 24 fewer, okay? The gap has grown by 34. In Massachusetts, 3 fewer, okay? This is not meant to be a negative thing about other places, and I'll get to the point at the end about why I'm sharing this information with you and why I'm sharing it that way, okay? But how does that compare to what you thought it was going to look like when I changed that slide? And every year, this is what it does. It goes up a little bit, a little bit, a little bit every year. And other traditional places, because they've changed how they deliver their hockey to a 6-year-old, to a 10-year-old, to a 12-year-old, to an 18-year-old, it is proving that way is not for the betterment for the sport as a whole, okay? One place is doing this, one place is doing that. How does it look for those 200? And so these numbers are based on last year. We haven't had a chance yet to do it for this year. It's going to look better for this year, but my apologies, this research is a year old, okay? So of those 223 guys that played college hockey last year from Minnesota, 208, almost all of them, played high school hockey. 158 played their senior year. So if you eliminated every Minnesotan that left early, whether for junior hockey, whether for the NTDP, maybe they didn't play high school hockey, they went and played AAA hockey somewhere, or they went to academy. Eliminate all those guys, and Minnesota's still the #1 state, just based on high school seniors. Just based on high school seniors. And where do they play? Where's goalie? They don't all play at Minnetonka. Okay?
It only seems like it.
It only seems like it, but they don't all play at Minnetonka. Okay? 44 played at Class A schools. 58 played out of the Twin Cities metro area. So if you got rid of the 11 county metro area, the rest of Minnesota would still be one of the top college hockey producing states in the country. Okay? And as a good visual, here are the Class A schools. Absolutely some hockey powerhouses up there. War Road, Hermantown, okay? And probably some high schools you didn't realize had a Division I hockey player. Here are the non-metro communities with a Division I hockey player. And I can't go into it now, but I want to stress this. What sets Minnesota apart to me isn't what happens in the Twin Cities. It's what happens outside the Twin Cities. And I'm from Duluth, so I'm really proud of this. If you go to other states, almost all, if not all, of the hockey occurs in the major metropolitan area. Because the model narrows down to a handful of teams. So if you're a really good player in a place like Thief River Falls, then you feel like you have to go play on a team in the Twin Cities, okay? And what happens is, because that happens, hockey doesn't exist in any form in Thief River Falls, because they don't have enough teams for Thief River Falls to play. So the culture of the sport is mostly a large city sport, okay? This slide is my favorite slide here, how healthy and successful hockey is in the small towns of Minnesota. Looking at it from a National Hockey League standpoint, last year 67 Minnesotans in the NHL. That's a record for any state, most ever. NHLers from Minnesota is doing the same thing as college hockey players. Compared to our counterparts, 37 from Michigan, 32 from Massachusetts. Keep in mind those states have a lot more people to begin with in them. Of those 67 guys, 59 played high school hockey from 36 different high schools. 36 different high schools. We didn't count Edina 36 times. That's Edina and 35 other high schools. A lot of the high schools you'd guess. A lot of high schools you probably didn't realize had an NHL player. One out of 59 Americans is a Minnesotan. 1 out of 59 Americans is a Minnesotan. 1 out of 10 American hockey players is a Minnesotan. 1 out of 4 American NHL draft picks are Minnesotan. So 1 out of 10 American hockey players, 1 out of 10 American hockey players are Minnesotan. 1 out of 4 that gets drafted are Minnesotan. The infrastructure in this state is phenomenal, and it's getting better. Okay. All right, so I call this is the slide my wife wrote. She just constantly asks me, why do you care so much? Because I'm talking about it all the time, or I'm showing her articles that she has no interest in. Okay. So this is like, you're asking like, why do you care about this a lot, okay? Because of my current job with College Hockey Inc. I've had the good fortune to meet wonderful hockey people from all over the hockey playing world, especially in the United States, since the US is our focus. And the people involved in hockey are just like you guys, just like the people in this room. They're wonderful, they love the game, they want to be better coaches, they want to be better administrators, whatever they are. But the infrastructure they operate in is entirely different. Okay? But there is a place where it used to be very similar, and now it's entirely different. And that's Massachusetts. As I mentioned earlier, Massachusetts used to beat Minnesota in most every category. And it would go back and forth. Minnesota one year would have more college guys, more NHLers, and Massachusetts would have it. And it was really a cool battle. I think even when I was really little, I remember there was a high school, Bruce, you probably know about this, right? A Massachusetts-Minnesota high school thing, okay? So very similar there. They have a little more of the prep school culture, a little more Catholic school culture, but it was play for your town, hate the other town, play for your high school, hate the other high school, don't travel anywhere, stay in the state, don't spend a ton of money doing it, and if you want to play some baseball in the spring too, you get to play baseball in the spring. It used to be very similar to Minnesota. Not to say Minnesota hasn't changed in certain ways, but Massachusetts entirely changed from a community high school, from a town to your school, okay, playing with mostly the same teammates, to a club, and then who knows what. The who knows what could be high-level junior hockey, pay to play junior hockey, an academy, or quit, any of those things. And the results, now that it's been a couple of generations since Massachusetts changed, I would argue there's not one thing that has been an improvement if you compare it to the way it used to be in Massachusetts and the way it is now in Minnesota. And not in here, hard to measure, is the cultural impact. I've never lived in Massachusetts. I've talked to a lot of people from there, and they frequently bring this piece up. They don't necessarily bring up fewer guys playing college hockey. They don't bring up fewer guys playing in the NHL. The two things they bring up, the sport doesn't seem to mean as much as it used to, and it costs a hell of a lot more to do. Okay? So Massachusetts used to have that. Minnesota still does. And so whenever I'm asked to talk to this audience, I'll do my job first, tell you about College Hockey Inc., use this as a resource, see where Minnesotans go, feel pretty good that now we're down to one Minnesotan playing major junior hockey. So how I look at it, every Minnesota guy playing hockey has his college eligibility except one, so we're doing our job there. I wouldn't feel really good about myself if I didn't share this information with you because I know it. So I want to make sure that you guys have it. Okay? Because we have some very serious threats to what we have here in Minnesota. And this was said to me by a good friend of mine who owns some arenas in Michigan, who's an advocate for what we do here, who inspires me to deliver this. He used to be one of my bosses, he used to be on the board that I report to, and he said, absolutely, you got to talk about this because you don't want to become an environment where your rinks are owned by somebody whose goal is to make money off of it. You want your rink owned by the community in East Grand Forks because that keeps the sport local, affordable, accessible, and inspiring. Okay? So the threats as I see it, first off, it is spectacular that hockey is being played everywhere in this country. Major kudos to USA Hockey and to the NHL for what they've done in growing the game and seeing now hockey occur in border to border, coast to coast. Hockey players come from those places. But nowhere else in the country, other than really North Dakota and western Wisconsin, delivers hockey like we used to. So way back when, we were probably 1/3 of the hockey players in the country. Massachusetts was 1/3 of the hockey players in the country. 67% of everybody playing hockey in the country was doing it the same way. Now, only 10%. And any new place, Las Vegas, the newest place to really explode with hockey, they're not exploding by determining who's the next Roseau and who's the next Warroad. They're determining who's the next Little Caesars and who's the next Honeybake. Okay? And they kind of have to there because the rinks are privately owned. The schools aren't going to pay for hockey. They're certainly not going to subsidize it like our schools do. Small communities, you know, there's no Cloquet's deciding that, man, one ice sheet's not good enough, we need two. Okay, that's not happening anywhere else. That's only happening here. But as all of these other for-profit hockey entities start, and that's the way it has to be if we want to grow hockey elsewhere, suddenly kids here that used to not get calls from Mount St. Charles or BK Selects or Sioux Falls Power or you name it, now they're getting calls. Okay? So the vast majority of the growth of hockey in our country is a wonderful thing, but a challenge with it is Minnesota has 67,000 potential customers for those businesses. Okay? And then thirdly, I think our biggest threat is we don't realize how good it is. So it's like the enemy is within. Okay? So we have problems. We have tremendous opportunities to improve hockey in Minnesota, all the way down from Mites and the association up to the high school. None of this is to say it's perfect here, to be arrogant about it. We have opportunities to improve it, but our issues are like shoplifting, and elsewhere the issues are armed robbery and maybe even murder. So when we're trying, and when you guys are trying to, you know, talk about things like players transferring, okay, or whatever it might be, please understand that that's something to address. Let's make it better. But know what we have here. And let's do all that we can to make sure that we keep it and we make it better. All right? And I just want this last thing, second to last thing I want to share. I get these emails all the time. I have an 8th grade son playing hockey. I got this email from like scratched his name, but this is a legitimate email, and I just, like, I can't believe this. This is a Des Moines 13 only team. Sent out a massive email to kids in Minnesota to recruit them to come play on their 13-year-old team in Des Moines, because now there's a national championship for 13-year-olds. And it says here, I highlighted it, but if you can't read that, the biggest difference is visit. He says Minnesota, North Dakota, parts of Wisconsin play community-based hockey, but just about everywhere else in the U.S. plays Tier 1 at the highest levels. The biggest difference is visibility and scouting as they age. This is the first year that U.S. Hockey is hosting the 2010 age group U13 national championship, so on and so on. Okay, so you just saw all the stats. 1 out of 4 draft picks in the NHL come from Minnesota, and this guy is selling parents in Minnesota that their 13-year-old has to go to Des Moines to be scouted. Okay, so I don't know how this is good for hockey in Minnesota, and I don't know how this is good for hockey in Des Moines. I think the Des Moines team should be made up of a bunch of kids from Des Moines, and the kids in Woodbury and wherever else should stay in Woodbury. So that motivates me, and that's part of the reason why I'll do this anytime you guys ask. Okay. One final QR code. Are the coaches' site in here? Did they come in back? All right, back there, good friends of College Hockey Inc., good friends of Minnesota Hockey. Through the coaches' site and the International Ice Hockey Federation, I had a wonderful just opportunity and a great experience to be part of their annual coaches symposium that occurs at the World Championships every year. This year it was in Finland, and to talk about Minnesota hockey. So I actually took vacation time from my job, went over to Finland and presented on this, and the response was pretty cool. And they put it up on YouTube, so if you'd like to watch that, feel free. And I would actually like any feedback that you might have about the messaging, if this is valuable to you. Because I really think you're the most important audience, because each one of you have contact with 25 of these players and their parents, and the next generation of 25 of these players and their parents, and all the way down in the community where you coach. I guess thank you. Appreciate what you guys do and how you just kind of carry this wonderful model that we're all fortunate to have, and shine it up and make it better for the next generation.
I was just gonna say it's super valuable. We have our Buffalo Youth Hockey coaches meeting on Sunday night, and I'm gonna share some of these things with our coaches so that the message is delivered to them. What you're saying is that they know this is the best opportunity. Even in our community, we have people that are going to Maine or doing things like that they don't need to do shit. Yeah. They don't need to spend that money. So I think the stuff you're sharing is awesome for us to see. So thank you.
And it's not perfect,
no,
but it's pretty special. Are there any questions? I don't mean to take your time, Goldie, either, but.
I super appreciate what you guys do. How do we support you guys? What is your guys' funding source at College Hockey?
With College Hockey Inc.?
Yeah.
Well, we're funded by the NHL and by USA Hockey.
Okay.
And then also by this Icebreaker tournament, by the way, too. So if you're going to that, spend as much money as you can, because that's our tournament. So that's why I'm up here.
You guys get alcohol sales, or?
Yeah. No, I did. I was a bad negotiator. I forgot we might play in North Dakota. So we're funded by that, and I want to be clear. My job with College Hockey Inc. is to keep the Minnesotans and all other Americans eligible for college hockey. So we kind of have that, right? We're down to 1, so we got 1 more. So got 1 more kid to go, and then we are where we want to be in Minnesota. And it's going down everywhere else. It's down to 71. Its high was 154. It's been cut in half in 8 years' time. And if you look at those 71, it's not the best Americans. Where it used to be the Patrick Kanes, Matthew Tkachuks, they were playing major junior hockey. Now they're that high-end American is definitely not playing major junior. Okay.
So are you getting death threats then from the major junior hockey?
My passport has been flagged, and I'm no longer allowed in Canada. But no, I full credit to what you're going to see over here and in college hockey. It's just such a wonderful thing, If you have the chance to be a college hockey player, I mean, even guys that go on to play 1,000 years in the NHL will say that guys that play 1,000 years in the NHL will say, there was no experience like college hockey. And the only ones that will add to that, or I shouldn't say the only, but the majority of ones that will add that is the kid that also played Minnesota high school hockey. Because what I picked up on through working with youth hockey throughout the country. And that's what my job is whether it's here in Minnesota or Massachusetts or Michigan or Missouri or wherever, is getting in tight with the youth hockey programs and then getting in front of the 14 and 15-year-olds before they've signed to make sure that they're aware of the facts, okay? And I'm a little bit like, what's the word? I'm kind of optimistic because I think they actually listen to the facts. You know, I mean, look at the numbers, they're going down, right? So here in Minnesota, if we just tell these families, like, look at what it looks like for a Noah Cates or a Perbix or whomever to make the NHL, a number of them will actually listen, right? And then it's only gonna make it better here. So I'd say, like, I think my job is, you know, from my employer standpoint, I finished that 8 minutes in. Then after that, I got more into I went from my vocation to my avocation in a way, right? But I'd say selling college hockey, the only other hockey in the US like college hockey is high school hockey. And not just high school hockey in Minnesota. If you see videos from high school hockey in Michigan or Missouri on social media, it might not be 18,000 people, but it's 6,000 people. And it's passionate, and it's student sections, and it's playing for this, and no names on the back, and all that wonderful stuff. But unfortunately, because of the privatized rink ownership model and everything that goes after that, hockey elsewhere, for the most part in our country, is privatized. And it's not connected to the school, and there aren't these boundary rules, so I can play for Little Caesars this year, Honey Baked next year, Bell Tire next year, then I'm gonna bill it in Sioux Falls the following year, and it's just not a great model for growing our game to its fullest potential. Does that make sense? And that came, did I even answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.